Okay, so this is very spur of the moment. I'm with a very brave young lady here who's my dear friend, Katherine Harrold, who I call Princess Catherine, but I'll get into that at some point. Yes, oh, good, I love that. Wiggle of the nose, yeah. And we haven't spoken for a year. We met in Ireland a year ago through our mutual friend Tracy O'Connor, who I've described is my Celtic queen for understanding the Irish and Celtic mythology here. And so
Fairy
anyway, she's what?
a fairy goddess.
Fairy goddess, yes, she's definitely one of the enlightened ones. And so Catherine and I met a year ago here. We had a 4 hour conversation the first day we hung out, and we had a lot of things in common. We've not really spoken since then, but she's bravely and courageously and generously letting me share her story because her story is many people's story about spiritual awakening and growth. So
Mm.
that's me. Over to you.
All right, where do I start? Do I start
Well,
back like where we met?
yeah, wherever you like. I mean, I love, you've been doing some things since we met that
Hmm.
will interest everyone, myself included. But I would
Okay.
love if you would give us a little background on your own spiritual journey and I think why the cosmos put us together and, how you've been very on your path for a long time. Yeah.
I have. Yeah. So I guess quick background on my spiritual childhood. um,
Is perfect.
uh, yeah. I was sent to a Christian well, I probably came out of the womb very attuned. I just have always been like my preschool teacher told my mom, she's particularly spiritually attuned.
Well,
Um, and
that
my mom sent me to
doesn't happen for everyone.
right.
Yeah.
And my mom sent me to a Christian preschool. So I'm hearing, which was ironic because she wasn't a Christian at the time. So she like marched in and was like, don't send my kid home with any guilt trips. But
I like that.
I came home talking about Jesus because somehow in the process of being in that school and just getting introduced to the concept, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's real. And the idea of God and love and all of that felt so organic to my heart. So I bought in right away and come home talking to my mom about it.
Right.
And would say that like I have always almost like for as long as I can remember, I've heard things and seen things that other people didn't hear and see.
Yes.
And um really had like a very communicative relationship with Jesus. Like he always just felt like my best friend.
Right. You were
And
chatting with him and meeting, he would you
yeah,
would see him.
like
Yeah.
never saw like, there's some people that even see, like physical representations and stuff. I never had that happen. I saw
Okay.
demons.
Okay.
but um but I just had this like, they say clairaudience, I guess. It's like there are voices that I hear.
Sure.
And for the longest time, I just knew when he was communicating with me. And he was the one that I talked to when I had a problem or when I,
Yeah.
needed to figure out some craziness that was happening with my mom.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I really grew up in a very conservative, we went to Assemblies of God church. My grandparents went to a Lutheran church. We tried out a bunch of different churches. And it was extremely confusing as well because although I had this like really deep connection in my heart and in my spirit, my mom, bless her, um, was constantly telling me that I wasn't hearing. Like I would go pray for direction about something. She, one of her things to do was like send me to my room to pray about why I had done something wrong
Yeah.
and repent and fix myself and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So I would go in and like genuinely like, all right, God, let's do this. Let's fix the broken thing,
Right.
and come out with like this revelation, and she was like just constantly like, no, you haven't really changed. You need to go back in and pray some more. And
Wow.
so I just share that to say like a big part of my journey through those years was although I had this connection, I didn't I didn't feel the sureness of it. I very much doubted in it.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and so then fast forward to, I'm in my, like, yeah, it was pretty much just that until about my mid 30s.
Okay.
And um,
I mean, you and your mom had some big
yeah,
challenges,
if
which
you
you,
want to go there.
well, I mean, again, honey, with love and respect, you're being very kind and generous with, jumping into the deep end after not chatting for a while. But
Oh,
yeah, you've overcome a lot, is what I want people to understand.
yeah. Well, yes. So,
Thank you. I'll settle for that.
yeah, it's so weird when I start telling this part of my story because I almost feel this like I just need to give you the laundry list and I know it's going to shock you. And I'm okay now, so you can be okay. So, so I'll just say this is what I've traversed through. Um, my mom was slash is highly narcissistic. According to my counselor, she's never gone and gotten tested or, counseling or any of that kind of thing. And narcissism is so hard to diagnose. Um, and potentially like a sociopath or sociopathic tendencies or something. Um, because there was a lot of physical abuse of my sisters and my niece. I received some physical abuse, but most of mine was emotional and psychological.
Yeah, bless you.
Um, hmm?
Bless your heart.
Yeah. I almost wish she'd hit me more. But
Well,
I was a, yeah, I just became codependent at such a young age. And it's like chicken or the egg. I don't know which came first, but I definitely just like took on the role of being her supporter and making sure she was okay. And
sure, sure, honey. This is what survivors of abuse have to do in order to protect themselves. You know.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it was just me and her. So like my other sisters left, it was just me and her. And so there was this like, my dad had left for good reason, probably.
Everyone,
Um,
everyone ran to the door as soon as they could.
everyone
Yeah.
ran and I'm like holding down the fort,
Right.
like real strong until 34 years old. And, a large part of that, there was also sexual abuse. There was
So
a
sorry.
lot of thank you.
Yeah, honey.
There was a lot of chaos, in my younger years with the custody battle with my dad and her literally forcing me to tell my dad he wasn't my father and that my father was in heaven, that God was my father. And like if I went home and I hadn't like fully pushed my dad away, then she wouldn't talk to me for days. So it was just a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd say so. Yeah, bless you. Huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of went through my teenage years. I was in homeschool. We were, I got at some point she got a hold of this teaching of um, like this guy took I Kiss Dating Goodbye and purity culture another step. This guy that she was listening to, and he was basically like proposing that everybody goes back to betrothal, like the Bible days. And so, like, of course, this gives mom more control.
Yes,
so,
which is the
so she
magic
loved it,
word. Yeah, yeah.
And so I wasn't allowed to date. I wasn't allowed to socialize unless she could go with me, but nobody's going to take their mom to their 14-year-old birthday party.
Sure, sure.
So I just didn't go to anything.
Bless your
So
heart.
it was a lot of isolation
Yes.
and just a lot of chaos.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Bless you.
really, really hard to keep a connection with Jesus as much as he was like my best friend and like my safety.
Yeah.
I always felt like I was still needing to prove myself to God because I was still needing to prove myself to my mom. I was always this problem that needed to be fixed. I was always this bad girl that needed to be reproved and
Right. She,
um
there's nothing wrong with your mom. Your mom's perfect. You know. Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much. I mean,
Yeah.
there was the occasional apology, but very, very rare.
Right.
um
Right.
and I watched her like really beat the shit out of my niece
Oh,
and do some
horrible.
really scary things.
Yes. Sorry.
So yeah, there was just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And When I was about 21 years old, my sister committed suicide. My niece, her mom, I have several nieces, but my niece Katherine, who was named after me,
Okay.
she committed suicide. And I share that because it was really a turning point for me. I was about 21 and I think that was when I was like, oh, like life is short. I don't know what has to change, but something has to change.
Yeah.
And so I think I started like trying to get independent at that point, which for me was like working out and trying to watch my diet because my body was the only thing that I had any kind of sovereignty over.
Wow.
Haha. But she like talked me out of that. She was like, you're obsessed with this and you know, blah, blah, blah. And so it actually did end up becoming an obsession. I became severely anorexic and I was working out 2 hours a day. And
Wow, sweetheart.
that was my mid 20s essentially. But at the same time, like we're running a catering business, I'm working at a church, I'm managing like major large events for like thousands and thousands of people. And
Wait, let me lie down. Yeah, okay.
yeah, it was my 20s were just chaos. My 20s
Yeah.
were just complete chaos. And somehow I was keeping it all juggling, you know, and my niece was living with us. And so mom and my niece were constantly going at it. And really my mom was just constantly abusing my niece. Um, and yeah, like at some point, I guess like we were both working at that church and my mom got let go. Can't imagine why.
Yeah.
And um, I stayed on for a little bit and then I left and we just kind of like devoted ourselves to the catering business, which was not.
Well,
It's so funny when you look back, you're like, I prayed about this and I thought God told me to do this, but it's so funny, like how your mind will just make the decision that you know is expected and required.
of course,
Of,
honey, of course. I mean, again, that's how you survive abusive people. You talk
yeah,
yourself into things, you know, to
talk
get
yourself
through it.
situated out of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that takes me to about 34. And
Okay.
I mean, there's lots of details and stuff in there, but for the purposes of today, I think that's probably sufficient.
Yes, that's a healthy dose of how much you've overcome. God love you.
Yeah. Well, and in also, so this will be pertinent. Also, I hadn't talked to my dad in 25 years. So when he finally like gave custody to my mom after I think like 5 or 6 years of fighting for custody,
Right?
um, we had this like massive showdown and he finally was like, I'm never going to get through to her as long as she's living with
Yeah.
Judy. And so anyway, we hadn't spoken in a really long time. And I was still at this point like very in the church. You know, we weren't actually attending a church because there were a lot of reasons. Like we got fired from a church, but we were still kind of, it was weird. We were just in
Well,
between.
yeah, sweetheart, your mom is so bloody crazy. She can't stay in any group for long, and you've protected her from the world. You know, God love her.
Yeah. Well, I hate to refer to her as crazy, but
I understand.
um
I'll take full
yeah.
responsibility.
Okay.
Yes.
Because honestly, like so much of my spiritual growth has been around like true forgiveness for my mom. So, but we'll
Sure.
get to that
Okay.
point.
Good.
So yeah, so I'm trying to like think of the timeline here. So I was working in an animal hospital and I was like starting to get some new friends. There was a guy there that I liked. And of course, he's going to pick my husband, legit. And so like it just became this thing of like, do you think he's the one? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'd like to like at least explore the option. Like he seems really great. He makes me laugh. I feel fun around him, like whatever. And it just became this like issue between the two of us that she could not let go of. And things just like between that and like me getting other friends, which I hadn't had other friends outside of the house for years. You know, even when I was working at the church, it was like I wasn't allowed to go out with the young kids that were my age there because again, every time I was like, "Oh, they're going out for dinner." She's like, "But what about our promise to each other? Can I come?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is weird. Forget it. I'm staying home."
Yeah.
Um so
Held you
I,
hostage, honey.
huh?
She held you hostage, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my really good friends, when I first like came out with my story, was like, "Oh my God, you're literally Rapunzel."
Yeah, yeah. I
This is
think
why my hair is so short now.
yeah,
Um,
I think that might have been me that said that. Yeah, yeah,
um, so anyway, like started getting some other friends and just sort of for whatever reason, I just stopped playing the game as much. And I started like, no, I'm going to go to this thing and
yeah,
you're not coming with me
yeah.
or whatever. And
Good
it
for you.
just, thank you. It
Yeah,
just
honey.
dissolved to a point where, she was like, well, it's basically all of them or me. And so for the first time ever, I talked to somebody
Right,
um and just had this like, divine encounter where someone was like, yeah, this is control and manipulation and this is not right. And which I literally like as soon as they said that, everything inside of me was like, oh yeah.
right,
But my brain was like, wait, what? you
right,
know?
right.
Because I had so convinced myself.
Sure,
So this
honey.
was me, I'm like, wait a
Sure,
second. This
sure.
isn't what an honorable child does. I'm so confused.
Yes, bless you.
Um,
You
so that was 8 years ago.
okay?
And um, after that, like, went into lots of counseling and lots of
Right,
programs and all
right,
these things.
right.
But was still very much in the church, ended up working for another major church. I'm like 34, 35 years old at this point. I'm still a virgin. I'm still waiting for the one. I'm still waiting for, because even though like I'm outside of, right, even though I'm outside of, my mom's control, the church is still very like, any sex out of marriage is bad. And there's still a lot of, it's like,
Guilt, guilt, dear.
guilt, and it's also this like real pressure to find the one. There's no, even though they
Yeah,
say they're okay with dating,
yeah,
it's like the whole thing is not, it's weird, it's so weird. So nobody's dating each other, nobody's getting together, it's very rare, and it's like a fucking miracle. And
yeah.
so
It's hard to win if you don't play.
right. So anyway, so that was kind of like, until I was about 38. Like that was I was like spreading my wings, though. I was, taking voice lessons and getting involved in performing arts and trying to pick up my writing and just trying to go for the
Yeah,
things that I've been passionate about.
yeah, yeah.
And then when I was, I think it was 38, 37, 38, I went to Bethel Ministry School, Supernatural School of Ministry or something like that. I forgot now.
Wow,
Um, and
I like the
yeah,
title.
yeah. Huh?
I like the title.
Yeah. Well, and that was what drew me. It's like I've always been this mystic. I've
Yes,
always believed in the magical. Like, so it's interesting. I look back at my life now and I'm like, I was obsessed with aliens, anything Egyptian, um, mythology, magic. If there was a show about magic, I was watching it while my mom was asleep. you know?
right, right, right.
I mean, I wasn't even allowed to play with My Little Ponies because they were magical, but I had this like deep fascination.
Yes,
So you give me like the title Supernatural School of Ministry, and I'm like,
yeah,
sign me up.
yeah. Good.
So I go out there and whoo, like I'm so grateful for it now. There were good and interesting parts of it, but I am so grateful because it was a supernatural environment. So talking to Jesus was cool. Demons
Right,
were acknowledged.
right.
um, angels, and there was just all this like emphasis on actually bringing in the spirit realm, and that was where I really really bonded with Jesus. Like I remember so many moments while like worship is happening up on the stage and I'm just sitting on the floor and I'm like, I've got my arms crossed and my hands open, my eyes closed, and Jesus is right in front of me.
Oh,
And like I remember one encounter like so precious where he sat in front of me
yeah,
just and mirrored my body language.
right.
And I was working through all of this at the time, and he just
Sure.
looked at me. He was like, "Can I hold your hands?"
Wow.
And I broke
Good.
because it was like, to
Yes.
me, the expression of the divine at that point was asking my permission.
Yeah, honey. Respect.
You know? Respect, yeah. And so there were so many. Also, come to find out now, like I was in Mount Shasta, which is like, I
Right.
don't know, it's one of the chakras. I can't remember which one. Is it the
I,
throat?
I've been many times. It's a very special place.
It's a very special place.
Yes.
And now I'm like, oh, this is why my spiritual awakening started there, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so went to this school for a year and then ended up switching to writing to a like a performing arts school that they also had. Still very evangelical, very like, we're going to save the world, we're going to bring everyone to Jesus, we're going to do miracles in his name, and we're going to take over Hollywood.
Yeah.
And um actually they would not say take over Hollywood. I want to be accurate here, but they wanted
Save
to,
Hollywood from
there you
itself.
go, something along those lines.
Yes.
um And so, but at this time, like I'm having all these mystical encounters. I'm like, Jesus literally taught me to meditate. I had never meditated before. And I'm
Oh,
sitting in my quiet time one time and he's just like telling me what to do. And I literally fell into such a meditative state that I like tipped over.
well,
And so I'm just having like all these interesting things happen. I like went on a road trip to the coast of California and ended up in Point Lobos. And I start getting this like huge download about a story. Like I'm hiking in the woods and I hear, look up the connection between Egypt and Ireland. And I'm like, what? And I look it up and it's like, there's a massive connection, you
wow.
know?
Wow.
Um, and that started like these downloads about this story, which I'm now writing.
Right. Great.
And but again, still very much like in recovery mode and all that kind of stuff. And then I, about 2 years ago, ended up coming down to Los Angeles thinking like, this is eventually where I'm going to move because I'm training to be a screenwriter, and I'm going to spend 6 weeks here, and then I'm going to go back for another year of school to train to be a screenwriter. And
2 years
I got
later.
down, huh?
2 years
2 years later,
later.
right? Yeah, I got down here and literally like what I would say is the divine. Like there was such a wrestle. It was like just this like, why are you going back?
Yeah.
And I had started to see some of the what I will call unhealth in the church in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I just had some like really interesting encounters with God, the divine, before I even came down here, that was just kind of like showing me like how their name gets put on a lot of things that are not their name
Sure.
or that are not from them,
Yes.
And anyway, so I
Yes.
come down here, I feel deeply, deeply called to stay and
Yeah.
just make it work.
There's a lot of freedom in LA, honey. Yeah.
So stayed here, was like training with someone in screenwriting for about 8 or 9 months. And then this is when things got really interesting because
Okay.
he challenged me
Not
to
that
write
they've
a
been dull so far, I promise you.
well, my coach, who I have to give credit to, his name's Tom Noonan. Tom Noonan, he's amazing. He like really challenged me. He listened to my story and like, P.S. I'm still a virgin now, not because of moral reasons. It just hasn't happened yet. But at the
May
time,
it be,
I
may it
was.
be everything you hope for and more, my friend.
Thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. But
Okay.
so at the time, I was still like 2 or 3 months out of school, and I'm still waiting for the one. you know.
Yeah.
So he challenged me. He was like, this is a really, really interesting part of your story, and I think you should write a screenplay about it. So we come up with this like basically female 40-year-old virgin kind of thing. And I share that to say that like in the writing of that screenplay, I start doing a ton of research into purity culture and into the church. And oof,
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see this film?
sounds.
Did you see this film Sarah Paulson did, Women Talking?
I have heard of it. I haven't seen it
Okay.
though.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll be interested to, so it's based on a true story of this fundamental religious cult where the women are raped and they decide, are they going to stay in the religion or seriously, or are they going to turn their rapists into the law and take their power back?
Oh, you know what? I started that and it was so triggering. I had a
Yeah.
hard time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not shocked. It's there aren't that many, really powerful films about this subject.
Yeah,
So
that one was like, whew.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, so I started researching and like just finding just so many holes, especially in the evangelical part of, well, really all of it. Just
what you mean it's not true? They don't know everything?
it's not just that they don't know everything, it's that the system is really set up. It's a hierarchy. And I started realizing, like, oh gosh, like there's this huge amount of disempowerment. And
Yes.
I've been so soaked in it my whole life. I didn't even know I was disempowered.
Well,
Like,
especially for women, my friend.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I started just listening to podcasts and soaking them up and doing research. I ended up talking to a sex therapist who like works with people specifically who have come out of purity culture. And
Wow, fantastic.
you know, like it's a thing, like just
Yeah, yeah.
the shame that is associated with your sexuality will literally physically shut down a woman's vagina.
Sure, sure,
Like
sure,
just
sure,
like
sure.
sexual abuse would. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah.
So I start getting like really, um
Upset.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah.
exactly. I
Yes.
got like a little bit of a savior complex going on. I'm like, I'm gonna bring this thing down.
Yes, please. Let's do that.
So, well, yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So and along the same time, I'm also like doing so much research into, how the Bible was written. And, through discussing it with this sex therapist, she's like, yeah, it was written 400 years after Jesus died. And it was this guy named Constantine. And he like wanted to subjugate the whole empire. So he
Yeah,
just brought everybody up like together under Christianity. And
yeah,
I start going into the story and I'm like, wow,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's a rule book with stories.
It's a rule book with stories, and it's a rule book that, like, if you read the Old Testament and the way that they talk about women and their cycles and like what that you get shut out of the village when you're on your moon, like what the hell?
Yeah.
Um,
No,
and
not very modern.
not very modern,
Yeah,
and just clearly skewed.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so then I start like questioning. I'm like, okay, and and found, I can't remember the name of the book. I wish I could. But there was this one book that was actually written by a guy who was still a Christian, but he really questioned like whether Jesus needed to die or not. And he essentially came to the conclusion that that was not why he came. That he came to show us Christ consciousness, like love
Yeah,
and how to be like what being an amazing human looked like and
yeah,
what's possible.
yeah, yeah,
And so I'm like, that feels really true. And I start chatting with like this whole time, I'm like talking to Jesus and I'm like, yo, my perspective is like really changing. Are you okay with this? And he's like, yeah, keep going.
Good,
Uh,
good. I'm
and
glad he approves.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, at this point, I'm still checking everything with him because I'm still like not operating in my own sovereignty at all. I'm believing that the divine has to tell me, that Jesus has to tell me everything,
Well,
like
you're making great progress, my friend. You've come a long way, honey.
Um,
You truly
but
have.
I was like, I remember praying about whether or not to even write that movie, the 40
Sure,
female 40-year-old version. I was like,
sure.
oh my God, I can't do, it felt so wrong. I had to push past so much shame. And Jesus was like, no, like
Well, let me
do this.
let me let me ask you this, Catherine. So, I mean, this is great, and honey, I thank you again. You're so vulnerable in sharing all this, with me and anyone that would look on this. What's happening with your relationship with your mom? Do you have a healthy boundary there now?
Well, we haven't talked in 4 years. So yeah.
Okay, that makes Uncle Lou, breathe a sigh of relief because that's, with really abusive people, there is no way to negotiate a healthy relationship.
No.
That,
Well, yeah. I, again, lovingly just the shout out to the divine because I've had a couple of encounters where I just felt very clearly guided to let that go completely.
a hundred
And,
percent, 100%. And the
and
more you can let go of guilt, shame, and blame, the more you'll feel safe, loved, and supported. and
Yeah.
honor your sexuality and your spirituality and your creativity, and just love yourself and be yourself, and know that you are enough.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I mean, since then, there's still been like a massive amount of work to really get to a place of forgiveness and honestly have like through plant medicines, and we haven't even gotten there yet, but
Yeah, well, that's you can go there now if you like.
I can go there. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, so like fast forward, I ended up going to Europe last year. I'm kind of in this space with my faith where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to question everything. Still have a really tight relationship with Jesus, but I don't know about any of the rest of this. And go to Europe, and I'm like in Italy and France, and then ended up in Ireland. And I'll share an encounter in Italy real quick because it actually like started everything.
Okay.
Um, I can't remember where we were, but we were in the Tuscan countryside, and we stopped at this like beautiful church. I was with a couple of friends, and we go inside, and there's like all these frescoes, all these paintings all over the wall of Jesus on the cross, Jesus in the coming out of the tomb, Jesus in the manger, Jesus on the cross again. And
I
I
know that
remember
guy's
just
everywhere. You can't get away from him.
yeah. And I remember walking around and being like, wow, this is a lot. Like, this is just interesting. And it was hitting me a different way. And I sat down on the bench, and I'm just sort of like looking at all of it. And I hear this voice very clearly say, this is idolatry.
Yeah.
And well, like you got to hear that from my perspective. I'm raised to believe that anything that isn't Jesus is idolatry. So I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. Gets your attention, gets you thinking.
I'm like, hold up. And whenever I know, like, whenever the divine is like really showing up for me, I get this like intense heat in my spine.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
like at this point, sitting there listening to this voice, like my spine is on fire. My whole back is on fire.
Wow, honey.
And I'm sitting there. So I'm like, all right, something's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not even in audible words. It was almost just like this complete download of like, I am so much bigger than you have been told. I like this is trying to contain me in a building, and I do not live in a building.
Yeah.
And I am so much bigger than you think. And if you'll let me, I'll show you. And it was a life changing moment for me because I remember sitting there and being like, if I say yes to this, everything is like, I just knew everything is going to change.
Yeah.
Like, it's scary as shit because I know that all like something's about to get really weird. And
Isn't it what you've been searching for your whole life?
my whole life, exactly.
Right.
So, but it's like that, it's like you got the grail in your hand, and you're like, I don't know. Um,
Well, what was your answer? We're all waiting to hear.
I cried, and because I do trust the divine so much,
Yes, honey.
and I knew that if I was being asked to go on a journey, that it would be a good one. And so I remember saying like, I'm scared of shit, but I trust you.
There you
So
go.
go for
Okay.
it.
Sounds like a
And
good decision to me.
yeah. So um
Bless your heart.
then we went to France, and I went to London for a little bit. Those were pretty normal. Then I got to Ireland. And Tracy was there my first day. She met me, and she took me to the Hill of Tara, and I told her, some about the story that I'm writing, which is like really pulling off of the inspiration of the Tua de Danann, which is the mythological gods and goddesses of Ireland. So much respect for the Tua. I love them. Have a relationship with them now. Um, and so I'm telling her that. I'm telling her I have Irish in my heritage, and we get on the hill, and she like stops, and she looks at me, and she's like, my hand is burning. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, can I put it on your heart? And I was like, yeah. And so
Okay.
sure. So
Yeah.
she puts her hand on my heart, and she looks at me, and she said, she's welcoming you home. And
Great.
I like wept. It was Eru, like Ireland is welcoming you home, the
Yes.
land.
Yes.
And then that whole day, like she takes me to the Hill of Grania. She takes me to, the stone of destiny and all these different places, and I'm just having mystical encounter after mystical encounter. I'm seeing visions, I'm hearing voices, I'm laying on the ground and hearing Mother Earth,
Wow.
and
Wow.
just like, okay.
Yeah. The switch was flicked to on. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um
Groovy.
and I'm flying through it all, just like, all right, I'm gonna process this later. Like, I don't know what's happening. This does
Yeah.
not fit the boxes, but okay.
Yeah.
And then we end up going to the cafe at Tara. We run into two of her friends, which are now my friends. They're amazing, Nadine and Jen. And
I just saw that picture from a year ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're like sitting there and I'm telling them about the story that I'm writing, and they're like just downpouring into me. And there's crows that are like cawing right above us, and they're like spiritual enlightenment birds. And it was just like this gaggle of like four witches just standing there, just like talking,
Great. Great. Great.
And it was like this initiation. And then for the rest of the trip, like Tracy just lined me up with all these people and all these places to go to. And I I remember, like, I think one of the other, well, there were two really impactful ones, but I'll try to keep this brief. There was a lot of forgiveness work done with my mom. And I remember crawling into one of the cairns and and I was doing a ceremony to release my mom. And I remember being very aware that there were three presences there with me, and I knew who they were. It was Bridget, it was Lou, and it was Danu. And I was
Right.
like, I don't know how I know you're here, but you're here.
Right.
And I just like doing my ceremony, and I'm forgiving my mom and I'm releasing her. And
Right.
then at the end, I just was like, um, so if you guys are here, what about Jesus? Because I was just confused. And I just heard very clearly, he's one of us.
Yeah.
And I started crying. I was like, because again, it just hit that like truth barometer in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, honey.
And then somewhere in that trip also ended up at Ishnok, which is like the sacred belly button of Ireland.
Yes.
And it is believed that Eru, who is like Mother Earth, but also the goddess who like, gave her name to Ireland, she lives there at the Catstone. And so again, like I remember like coming up above the hill and coming to this Catstone and like feeling her 50 feet away, like
Wow.
amazing. And I crawled down there, I got in the little hole and just had the most profound encounter with Mother Earth, like
Wow.
remothering me and talking to me about my soul contract and telling me what I signed up to do, and not
Wow.
even telling me, just like I actually found myself like from devotion just pouring out like, I will tell the stories. I will tell the story of your return, and I will tell the story of our future. And like all these words are coming out of my mouth, and I'm
Wow.
like, I don't know where this is coming from, but this feels really real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember her saying to me, "You've always had a mother." And I felt very deeply mothered by Mother Earth.
I'm, I'm glad to hear
Um,
it.
yeah. And so
Beautiful.
met you, had some like really beautiful encounters there. And like we shared so much. And then I came home and I'm trying to integrate all this.
Yes.
I'm like, my whole worldview just changed.
Yes.
Um, and I'm in a beautiful ecstatic dance community here. And had like just started like going to that before I went to Europe. And then when I got back, I got re-involved, and everybody's talking about plant medicine. Like everybody's doing it, everybody's talking about it. And I'm super curious and also kind of scared because,
Yeah.
hug
Yeah.
high and all this.
That's pretty powerful.
So I just kind of was like playing with it. Nobody was pressuring me. They were just talking about like sitting with medicine spirits. And I'm like, I feel this pull. Nobody's like trying to get me to do anything. I'm just like deeply curious, but also like, I don't know about this. And then one of my friends ended up deciding to run a ceremony right around my birthday. And I was like, F it.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to me. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try this.
Yeah.
And whew, I feel like I've already talked so long, so I don't know how far to
Well,
go
you're
into this.
great. I mean, this is, we can call this chapter one. So, over the last year, how many How many journeys have you made with your plant medicine?
I literally can't remember.
Right.
I
Okay.
would say
That says a
I
lot.
would say 10 to 12 maybe.
Yeah, that would be my guess from what I've heard you say from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been blessed. So the first medicine that I sat with was sassafras and then psilocybin, which is mushrooms. And that journey was probably just unwinding me. Like there wasn't a whole lot of spiritual downloads other than just like a real knowing that I was loved and feeling in my body for the first time ever, having gone through so much trauma.
Yes,
My nerves
bless you. Yeah.
and
Wow.
and plant medicines have really, really helped with that. Like I live in my body now.
Wonderful.
Um and sat with that combination several times. And then started sitting with a medicine that's different and more like heart opening. And have also been blessed to sit with some grandfather spirits that are more on the masculine side. And that has been truly transformative to have the masculine hold me, especially around healing with my mom and all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Great.
so yeah, it's been a beautiful journey. I think like two or three ceremonies in, I got really shown what a savior complex I had, and that I was like trying to save the world with my screenplay, and like the
Tall
divine.
order. That's a tall
Yeah,
order, my
exactly.
friend. Yeah.
Very tall order. And
Yeah.
it doesn't make it very fun. And it
Well,
actually
there's
screws
that. Say again, sorry.
it also screws your writing up. You don't write well when you're doing that.
Yeah.
Um,
You take the pressure off and have fun, then the creativity can show up.
yeah. And so I really like I do have to say this. Like I would say to anyone, enter the plant medicine space very aware. If you don't have time and space to kind of come unglued, because I totally did. you know, all of my like paradigms were being challenged and rearranged, and the medicine is such a beautiful ally, and each medicine has its own signature and kind of function, and you really have to be highly, highly intuitive with it. And like I said, like just know going in, the integration is no joke.
Right, but can I just say, jump in here real quickly, Catherine? One of the things that really impressed me about your whole experience with this, is that you're not doing it on your own. You're doing it with others in a set and setting that is supportive and conscious and respectful, again,
Yeah.
of the power of these experiences. And that's the biggest mistake that most people make or did anyway in my growing up days with experimenting with hallucinogens and all of that is they tended to look at it as recreational, but it's much more than that. And you and I were mentioning Change Your Mind, the series on Netflix about psychedelics and all that, which is a brilliant resource for people to start with these
Yeah.
things if all this is new to them. There's a lot out there. Um, but yeah, I just want to say, you've done it in a really conscious and supportive and intentional way, which is the ideal way to work with these things.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I do have to say, like, I really approached it from, I mean, I was kind of cavalier when I was like, oh, it's my birthday. I'm just gonna whatever. But I actually, like, I still am working on symptoms from the eating disorder.
sure, honey.
And
Sure, honey.
it's been the biggest booger in my life. Like, I've recently, because of the plant medicine, I came to the realization that it's actually like one of my greatest teachers. And it's teaching me to trust myself, because that's what was so taken from me. And so this is
That's,
like the most beautiful teacher in coming back to trusting myself.
yeah,
But for years and years and years, I've been trying to just get rid of it.
yeah,
And one of the really beautiful teachings. So going back to your point, like I really approached it from a therapeutic standpoint. I
yeah,
was like, I have hit this block all that I can hit, and I need help.
yeah.
Like I'm in food whatever
Addiction.
therapy.
Yeah,
I'm doing this thing.
yeah,
None of it's making a knock.
yeah,
And yeah, because we are all, I mean, this is what the medicine really ends up showing you. Like we are all part of Gaia. We are all, you know, I mean, you hear it, like we're the bacteria walking on her skin, you know, like we are actually cells of her.
Yeah.
And so these plant medicines do have tremendous capacity to heal the psychosis or the fear or the
Yeah.
guilt or the shame
Yeah.
or the things that are like really causing humanity to act like we're separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that it's this tricky little like, you know, as you heal then you actually start treating the planet better. As you heal you actually start caring about the things that are around you and the people. And
Yeah.
you know, and have, yeah, I've just been very introduced to the unity. We're all one. We really are.
Yeah.
And we're all part of this one living organism. And it's not
Yeah.
even just us on this planet, it's the galaxy, you know, it's
Yeah.
this like, we
Yeah.
are all this conscious, you know, emanations of this consciousness.
Yes, sweetheart. Let me just jump in for a second. The other part of it is, darling, about your inner child.
Oh,
And
yeah.
food and nurturing and safety and pleasure and guilt or denial or suffering to prove worth. Yeah, and acceptance. Like you're saying, the spiritual path is learning to trust ourselves and learning to respect our feelings and have healthy boundaries and take care of ourselves. And yes, all the cosmic interpretations are perfect, and all the human desire to save the world and make a huge difference in people's life, absolutely, that's brilliant as well. I mean, that's all good. But I'm just saying, the more you see, what I see is you've learned to trust that this journey with the plants, like everything else you're doing and have done and will do, is there for a good reason. If it shows up and you feel open to it and trustful of it, you're experimenting with it, you're sharing your story with us here, you're opening your heart, and as you're saying, I mean, for me, with my struggles and my health over the last several months and all that, it's acceptance of our human self and our human needs is a great gift.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to sing into this song here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Then you have something to share with the world and a place to share it from. But if we're our cosmic consciousness or our desire to be seen and known by the world, if that's at the expense of our grounding of loving and honoring and taking care of ourselves, it can't happen. It's too much. It's too big. It has to be small steps, to me, in the right direction, and we'll all go up and come back and learn from our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the learning self-love thing, and I'm still, you know, I don't want to sit here and act like I've got it all knocked because I'm
You never
still,
get finished, so
yeah,
there's no worry about that. You know,
it'll be a lifelong journey, you know?
and beyond,
Um,
my friend, and beyond.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, like knowing the fact that there's so many different incarnations, it really takes the pressure off of this one. Um,
Hallelujah! I'm glad to hear something, Ken.
yeah.
That's you.
Um, but yeah, there was a thought that I had while you were talking, just that, well, on the self-love thing and the pleasure. I you know, as like my sexuality has kind of been a little bit of a weaving thread in this conversation, that is something that has like really come back online. It's like I'm figuring out what my relationship is with it,
Great.
not even in the context of relationship. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah. No, it's for you.
it's
However you express it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, diving into tantric teachings and sacred sexuality and all these
Good.
like amazing practices that are really, again, it's like this sacred medicine that we were so disconnected from because
Yes.
of the church.
Yes.
It's, I have within my body the ability to like create ecstasy and regulate my nervous system and feel safe. What?
Yes. And loved.
You know?
Yes. And valued.
Yeah.
And precious.
Yeah. And that again, I think like just to because I know we've been chatting for a long time, but if I had to like leave, I guess maybe like one message that I've really learned and what I'm so passionate about in the world is this coming back to the recognition that we are all divine, that we are all one, we are all divine,
Right.
and nobody needs to be saved. We're all actually already perfect. It's
Right.
just to what you spoke to, it's the love and acceptance that is what is necessary for ourselves. Like we need to give it to ourselves first, and then we need to extend it to others. But
Yeah.
we're each and every one of us, we're sovereign.
Yeah.
And I guess I feel so passionate about that because my sovereignty was very definitely challenged.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean that is you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Bless you, honey. I just love you to pieces, woman. You're so dear to me, and it's a joy. Yeah. Will we leave it there for the moment? Do you need to move on? And that's a great place to put a pin in it and come back to at another time. How's that sound?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good place to pin it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm so grateful to you, sweetheart. Thank you. I love you very
Yeah,
much.
I
Great to
love
see
you
you.
too. Well, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
chat after you hit stop, right?
Yes, happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Do you want is there anywhere you want people to send you some love, give you some feedback, support your journey?
Yeah, they could find me on Instagram. It's at Katherine.Melinda. Melinda's my middle name. And
Beautiful.
Katherine is Katherine because
Right.
there's like 8 ways to spell it. Um, and yeah, that's probably the best way. I'm actually hopefully going to be starting a podcast about magic and about sovereignty in the next couple of months.
Right.
So
Right.
I would, if I had one request, it would be I would love to know from people like what of this resonated most, what they would love to know more. Because I do want it to be something that serves. And I mean, I'm on this journey of rediscovering magic. So I just figure I might as well take everybody with me.
That's my philosophy. I'm sharing my obsessions with everyone. That's all I can do, you know.
Yeah.
Good. Beautiful. Okay, great. Well, we'll leave it there. And yes, you and I will chat after we're done here.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
sweetheart. Love you. Peace.